All right, so let's take a look at how to actually graph with these graphing calculators. That's the greatest part of these kind of calcs is they allow us to make graphs really quickly and easily. So let's just get into the main functions. Your graphing functions are going to be the buttons that are across the top of your graphing calculator. So when you're graphing, you're going to mostly be using these 5 buttons here. The y equals button, if you want to press the y equals button, is going to allow us to get into the spots where we're going to type in our graphs. The one thing I'll say, if there's anything in any of these y's, I would just clear them out before you start. So if you just want to hit the clear button, so let's say somebody before you had stuff in there, you could just go up and just hit clear, move up to the one you want, clear it out, move up to the one you want, clear it out. And so that way everything's done. You can actually move up to these plot 1s, plot 2s. If for whatever reason they are ever marked like this, so they're darkened, it'll mess it up. So just make sure that none of those plots are darkened. And so your screen will look something like this. You'll notice next to each of these equations there's colors. That's because each one of these graphs will be in a different color if we want. And so let's just start off by doing something really simple. If I wanted to graph the line y equals x plus 3, what we have to be able to do is get variables in here. So our variable button, our x button, is the one next to the green button. It says x, t, theta, n. If you press that, you'll notice it brings up an x. So if you wanted to do 2x plus 3, you would do the number 2. And then you would just hit the x button plus 3. So you can type in as many equations as you want. We'll look at different equations separate. But you're going to hit again, if you're back at the main screen, and again, if you're ever not sure how to get back to the main screen and clear doesn't work, you can always do second quit, and that will get you back to the main screen as well. So again, if you're here and you want to graph, your graphing buttons are at the top, so you're going to hit the y equals button to get to the graphing mode. If you want to get back out to your math mode, second quit. So second, then the mode gets you back here. So those are the main ways to get in and out. So let's go back to graphing 2x plus 3. So I'm going to type in y equals 2. Again, our x button is here next to the green button, plus 3. Now I'm ready to actually see what that graph looks like. The y equals button is where you type in your equations. The graph button is the button that shows us the graph. So if I hit graph, it's going to show us that is the line y equals 2x plus 3. And so there's going to be some other buttons we'll look at, but I just want to make sure that you know you can go back from the graph back to the y equals just by clicking y equals. If instead you're like, oh, I didn't mean 2x plus 3, I meant 2x plus 2, you could make that change, hit graph, and it will regraph it for you. So you can go back and forth between your y equals and your graph, y equals and your graph to change it. So the buttons on the end are going to be really, really important. If I wanted to put another equation in, I could put in another equation, and it would, if I hit graph, it'd hit graph both of those equations. So now I'm going to have a purple line and a red line, and so it'll graph that second line as well. And so that's our main graphing functions. Again, you can go as many as you want using the up and down keys. You can clear them out. There's also something else that'll kind of come in handy. So let's say we went back to graphing both of those, 2x plus 3 and negative 3x plus 4. And I hit graph, and I wanted to know where those two lines met. So I can see they kind of meet right in here, but I want to get a better idea what coordinates that is. There's a couple things I can do. One is there's a trace button right here. This trace button, what it does, if you click it, so if you watch when I click it, it brings up a cursor onto this graph. And so this cursor is going to allow me to move up and down that line. And at the bottom, it tells me the x and y coordinate. And I'll zoom in here because you'll notice that those x and y coordinates are pretty precise. And so I can go and say, well, if I go to where it looks like those lines meet, it's somewhere around 0.3 and 3.6. I can just hit left or right to move anywhere I want. Oops, I hit the wrong button there. Go back to our graph, hit trace again. I can move up and down this to kind of go wherever I want, and I can also hit the up and down arrows to switch between graphs. So notice at the very top it says what equation I'm tracing. So if I hit the up arrow, I'm tracing the 2x plus 3. I hit the up arrow again, now I'm tracing the 3x plus 4. So the trace button just lets you follow your line, and it will go off the graph, you just can't see it. but you can kind of get a sense. So if you ever kind of need to do that. Another thing you can do is you can zoom. So let's say you want to get a closer look because I just can't quite tell. Up at top there's also a zoom button. So if you hit the zoom button, you got lots of choices. Z box stands for zoom a box. Zoom in is obviously zoom in, zoom out, zoom out. And we probably won't use these ones down here. The decimal, square, trig, those ones. But you'll notice there's quite a bit of ones. So if I did zoom box, what zoom box does is it allows me to paint a box. So I have this cursor and it allows me to paint a box. So let's say I want just that little bit. I could come over here, hit enter. Now that I hit enter, the cursor changed, and now it's going to let me draw a box, and it'll just zoom in on just that area. So I can say I just want to look at that area. When I'm ready, I hit enter again, and when I hit enter again, it'll zoom in just to that spot there, so I can get a really close look. Maybe I want to go to trace now, and I can get a really good sense of where these meet. It looks like it's about 0.2 and 3.4. There is a way to get the exact interaction. You know, when we need that, we'll talk about that. But you can get your calculator to tell you exactly where they meet. But now I don't like this zoom. And so how do I get out of here? So here's a big thing. Maybe you grab the calc, you hit y equals for the first time, you cleared these out, and you wanted to graph something. And the person before you had this zoom, and you're like, this is not helpful. This doesn't look right to me. One of the things you should know is you can always zoom and go back to Z standard or zoom 6. Just hit enter and it'll always get you back to where you were. So if you want to zoom in and zoom out and you mess up and you're like, I don't like this zoom in, this is zoomed in so much I can't even see the graph, you can always go back to zoom, and the sixth one, you can either type the number 6 here or you can hit scroll down to Z6 standard and it'll zoom you back out. So that's how we're going to zoom out. And then we can use the trace button as well to trace, and we can go from there. So y equals, that allows us to put our stuff in. Graph allows us to see the graph. If we don't have any equations in here, it won't graph anything. Trace allows us to trace it. Zoom allows us to zoom in. In window, when we click window, we're probably not going to mess with this too much. It basically shows us the zooms, but it says, what do I want my graph to start? So x min means I'm going to have my graph start at -10 on the x, go to 10 on the x, so it's going to go from -10 all the way to +10. And this x SCL is scale, so it's going to go by ones. So if we look, this graph starts at -10, goes all the way to +10, and counts by ones. I can change that and say I want it to count by 2s. And when I go to the graph, now you'll notice there's not as many here because it's counting by 2. So you can change that window. That's not something we do very often. And once again, let's say you did something and someone before you had it like -100,000, and so the graph looked, really goofy like this. You can always hit zoom standard, so zoom 6, and it will take you back to this, and it automatically adjusts the window. So the zoom, basically zoom 6 is going to fix anything from that window. Then there's a Y min, Y max, Y scale, resolution, which we won't mess with, and the trace steps we're not going to mess with, but it allows you to kind of determine how much you're going to change when you're looking at your trace. So there's lots of things there. So go ahead and take some time, graph a couple equations. Remember, when you get stuck, second quit brings you back here. Y equals brings you to the graphs. The X, if you need to make an X, is going to be right here. And so you can graph all kinds of equations, and when you're ready, just hit the graph button. And so we'll see all kinds of different shapes. Zoom is going to allow us to zoom. You can zoom out, you can zoom in, and then you can always hit zoom 6 to go back to zoom standard, and then clear out your graphs as you go. All right, try it out. See what you guys think. Let me know if you have questions.